It was one of those mornings when the city was drowning in cold rain, and the world outside looked too gray to care. Inside the towering glass building of Raven Corporation, the air was all business, phones ringing, footsteps echoing, and hearts racing to meet deadlines. At the very top floor, behind a mahogany desk that overlooked the skyline, sat Ethan Raven, one of the youngest CEOs in the country. He was known for being ruthless, efficient, and unshakably focused. But that day, fate was about to crack open his perfectly controlled world in the most unexpected way. As the morning sun struggled to break through the clouds, the office doors opened, not for an executive, not for a client, but for a tiny girl, no more than 5 years old. Her blonde curls were damp from the rain, her shoes slightly muddy, and her small hands clutched a white cloth, probably a cleaning rag. She wore an oversized apron and looked up at the tall man behind the desk with big, innocent eyes. The receptionist tried to stop her, but the girl had already spoken the words that froze everyone in place. "Mom's sick, so I came instead." If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that touch the heart, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread, because today's story will remind you that love and compassion can change everything. Ethan blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. The girl, barely tall enough to see over the desk, was shaking but determined. Her name, as he soon learned from the note she carried, was Lily. Her mother, Maria, was the janitor who cleaned the top-floor offices every morning before dawn. But today, Maria couldn't come. She had collapsed from exhaustion after working 2 shifts to pay for her rent and medicine. Instead of staying home, little Lily had put on her mother's apron, picked up her cloth, and come to work. At first, everyone thought it was some kind of mistake, but Lily's eyes told a story no one could ignore. She didn't cry, she didn't complain, she simply said, "Mom said we can't miss work, or we'll lose the job." That sentence hit Ethan harder than any corporate failure ever had. He had built empires, bought companies, and made millions, but in that moment, he realized he had never truly understood what survival meant. As the office staff gathered around, whispering, Ethan found himself staring at the small girl cleaning the edge of his desk with slow, careful strokes. Something about her calmness in the middle of chaos pulled at him. He asked his assistant to find out where her mother lived and sent his driver to check on her. While waiting, he sat in silence, watching Lily organize the pens on his table with childish precision, as if she was doing the most important job in the world. Hours later, the driver returned with a report that left Ethan speechless. Maria lived in a cramped one-room apartment on the city's edge. Her husband had died 2 years ago in an accident at a construction site, leaving her to raise Lily alone. She had no family nearby, and her wages barely covered rent. The only reason she hadn't been evicted yet was because the landlord had once been kind to her husband. Now, even that mercy was running out. Ethan, for the first time in years, left his office early. When he arrived at Maria's apartment, the smell of dampness and cheap medicine filled the air. Maria was lying on a worn-out couch, pale and weak, but still apologizing for missing work. "I'll come tomorrow, sir," she said through tears. "Please don't fire me." Ethan couldn't find the words to respond. He just stood there, looking at this woman who worked herself sick just to keep her little girl alive. That night, something shifted inside him. The man who once measured success in numbers began to think about value in a different way, about dignity, compassion, and second chances. He arranged for Maria to receive medical care through the company's insurance plan, something she'd never been eligible for before. He sent groceries to her home, paid her rent for 6 months in advance, and promoted her to a full-time employee with benefits once she recovered. But what truly changed him wasn't the act of helping, it was the way Lily responded. When Ethan visited again a week later, Lily ran up to him with a handmade thank you card. On the front was a crayon drawing of her mom smiling in front of a tall building with big letters that read Raven Corporation inside. In shaky letters, it said, "Thank you for helping my mommy. You're like her angel." Ethan hadn't cried since his father's funeral years ago, but that small card broke the walls he'd built around his heart. He began visiting Maria and Lily often, at first to check on them, but soon just to be near the warmth of their home. Lily, full of laughter and innocent questions, reminded him of a childhood he never had. Maria's quiet resilience reminded him of the mother he lost too soon. Slowly, the cold, calculating CEO began to rediscover his humanity. Months passed, and Maria's health improved. Lily started preschool, her uniform neatly pressed, her eyes bright with hope. Ethan found himself attending her school's charity event one day, where he saw her perform a small dance on stage. As she spun and smiled, his heart swelled with pride, an emotion he didn't expect to feel for someone else's child. When she ran up to him afterward and hugged his legs, saying, "Did I do good, Mr. Ethan?" he realized something he hadn't dared to admit even to himself: this little girl had become family. The story could have ended there, but fate had one more twist to offer. One evening, as Ethan was leaving the office, he saw a group of employees staying late: janitors, security guards, and receptionists, people who often went unnoticed. He paused, then made a decision that stunned the entire company. The next morning, an email went out announcing a new employee care program: free healthcare for low-income staff, scholarship funds for their children, and emergency financial aid for families in crisis. The board protested, saying it would cost millions. Ethan only replied, "If one little girl could remind me what humanity means, I think it's worth every cent." The story of the CEO who changed his company because of a janitor's daughter spread across the internet like wildfire. News outlets called it the kindness revolution. But for Ethan, it wasn't about headlines. It was about looking into Lily's eyes every time she visited and knowing he'd done something right. Years later, Maria continued to work at the company, not as a janitor, but as the manager of the entire cleaning staff. Lily grew up confident and kind, often visiting Ethan's office after school. He'd always have a chocolate bar waiting for her, and she'd always leave little drawings on his desk. The once cold and distant office now had life, laughter, and warmth. And every time Ethan looked out at the skyline from his office, he remembered the day a small, rain-soaked girl walked in with nothing but courage and love for her mother, and how that moment changed not just her future, but his own soul forever. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread, because every view helps us spread real stories of compassion and humanity. Special request: in the comments, write, "Kindness can change lives," if you believe one small act of love can make the world a better place. As the rain once again painted streaks across his office window years later, Ethan smiled softly, holding a framed drawing that read, "You're my hero, Mr. Ethan." He whispered to himself, "No, Lily, you were mine." And with that, the men who once chased profits learned the greatest truth of all: sometimes, the smallest hearts teach us the biggest lessons. Giving gifts, but giving hope. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of the magic of kindness, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Thread, where every story brings a little more light to the world. And before you go, comment below, glowing star: do you believe that a single act of kindness can truly change someone's life? Glowing star. Daniel kept Lily's handmade snowflake framed on his desk from that day on. And every Christmas that followed, he closed the office early, making sure every employee went home to their families. Because sometimes, it only takes one small whisper, one act of courage, to remind even the hardest heart what it means to be human.